They said the mafia boss never kisses, but the way he looked at me felt far more dangerous than any kiss ever could. I didn't understand that at the time. Not when they knocked on our door. Not when my father's hands started shaking. Not even when the room went silent in that suffocating way that tells you something is about to go very, very wrong. It wasn't loud. That's the thing. No shouting. No chaos. Just quiet footsteps, controlled, measured, like whoever walked in didn't need permission to exist in our world. Because he owned it. I didn't see him right away, but I felt him. That kind of presence isn't something you miss. It presses against your skin, slips into your breath, makes your heart beat just a little too fast for no reason you can explain. And when I finally looked up, he was already watching me. Not my father, not the men around him. Me. His gaze didn't wander, didn't hesitate. It locked onto me like I was the only thing in the room worth noticing. I should have looked away. Any normal person would have. But I didn't. I couldn't. There was something cold in his eyes. Something precise, calculating, like he wasn't seeing me as a person, but as a decision, waiting to be made. My father started talking then, words spilling out desperate, broken, offering explanations that didn't matter anymore. I barely heard any of it, because the man in front of me, this man everyone was clearly afraid of, hadn't moved, hadn't blinked, hadn't once taken his eyes off me. And then, without warning, he spoke. His voice was low, calm, the kind of calm that doesn't comfort, only controls. She'll do. That was it, 2 words. No discussion, no negotiation, just a choice made like it meant nothing, and everything at the same time. My stomach dropped. I felt it before I understood it. The shift, the moment everything changed. No, I started, but my voice sounded small, weak, like it didn't belong in the same room as him. My father didn't even look at me. He just nodded. That hurt more than anything else. I turned back to the man, anger rising fast enough to drown out the fear. I'm not going anywhere with you. For the first time, something in his expression changed. Not surprise, not anger, just interest, slow, dangerous interest. And then he moved. One step, then another, each one deliberate, each one closing the distance, until he stood right in front of me, close enough that I could feel the warmth of him, the faint scent of something dark and expensive, something that didn't belong in a place like this. But he didn't touch me, not even a brush of his hand. His eyes dropped briefly to my lips, and something in my chest tightened so suddenly it almost hurt. Then his gaze lifted again, locking with mine. You don't get to decide that, he said quietly. I should have stepped back. I didn't. My body refused to move, caught somewhere between fear and something far more confusing. What do you want from me? I asked, forcing the words out. He didn't answer right away. He just looked at me, like he was enjoying the question more than he should. Then slowly, he leaned in, not enough to touch, never enough to touch, but close enough that I felt his breath against my skin, warm, steady, controlled. You'll learn, he murmured. My pulse jumped, everything in me tensed. Waiting for what? I didn't even know, but it never came. He didn't close the distance, didn't break that final inch between us. And somehow, that felt worse, like he was choosing not to, like he was holding something back on purpose. Take her, he said suddenly, straightening, as if the moment had never happened. Hands grabbed my arms before I could react, pulling me back, dragging me away from the only person in the room who hadn't even touched me, and yet felt the most dangerous. I struggled then, panic finally breaking through. Wait, I twisted, looking back at him, needing what? An explanation, a reason, anything. But he just stood there watching, calm, unmoved, untouched by any of it. And that's when I realized something that made my chest tighten in a way I couldn't explain. He never touched me, not once, not even when I was taken right in front of him. And somehow, that made me feel like I already belonged to him more than if he had. He can own my body, but he refuses to kiss me. I didn't understand that the first night in his house. No, not a house. A prison disguised as luxury. The doors were too heavy. The silence too perfect. Every corner too controlled to be called anything else. They didn't lock me in a room. They didn't have to. The moment I stepped inside, I already knew. There was nowhere to run. I stood in the middle of a space that felt too large for one person, trying to steady my breathing, trying to ignore the way my pulse still hadn't slowed since he took me. I told myself I wasn't waiting for him. I told myself I didn't care. But when the door finally opened, my body reacted before my mind could catch up. He walked in the same way he had before, calm, precise, like the world adjusted itself around him, instead of the other way around. His eyes found me instantly. Of course they did. They always did. I forced myself not to move this time, not to show the same hesitation, the same weakness. Is this where you keep everything you own? I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. His gaze flickered slightly, not surprise, just that same quiet interest. Everything worth keeping, he replied. The words should have made me angry, They did, but there was something else underneath it. Something sharper. I'm not something you can own. I held his gaze as I said it, refusing to look away. For a moment, the room went still again, that heavy silence pressing in from all sides. Then he started walking toward me, slow, unhurried, like he already knew how this would end. I didn't step back, not this time. If he wanted control, he wasn't getting it that easily. He stopped right in front of me again, close enough that I could feel the heat of him, close enough that the space between us felt intentional, chosen. His eyes dropped, just briefly, to my lips, and my breath caught before I could stop it. Damn it, I hated that he noticed. Because of course he did. He noticed everything. You talk too much, he said quietly, and you watch too closely. I shot back. Something in his expression shifted again, that almost smile returning, colder this time, more dangerous. And then he did it again. He leaned in, slowly, deliberately, close enough that the world seemed to narrow down to the space between us. My heartbeat pounded in my ears. I knew what was coming. I could feel it. The tension, the pull, the way my body reacted, even when my mind screamed at me not to. Just a little closer, just one more inch. My lips parted slightly, breath uneven, caught in that fragile moment where everything could change. And then he stopped, right there, right before it happened. No touch, no kiss, nothing, just his breath brushing against my skin, his presence pressing into mine, without ever crossing the line. My chest tightened, frustration hitting sharper than fear ever had. What is wrong with you? I whispered before I could stop myself. His eyes lifted to mine again, calm, controlled, like this had been the point all along. I don't kiss, he said, just like that, simple, final. I blinked, thrown off balance, in a way I didn't expect. What? I don't kiss, he repeated, as if it were the most normal rule in the world. I let out a small, disbelieving laugh, shaking my head. You drag me here, tell me I belong to you, and that's your rule. He didn't react to the sarcasm, didn't react to anything. You don't leave this house, he continued, ignoring my question completely. You don't ask about my business. You don't disobey me. Each word landed heavier than the last, controlled, absolute. And you don't kiss, I added, unable to hide the edge in my voice. This time, he paused, just for a second. Something flickered behind his eyes, not hesitation, something deeper, something he shut down just as quickly. No, he said. I crossed my arms, forcing a scoff. That's your limit. That's what scares you. Big mistake. His gaze sharpened instantly, the air in the room shifting before I even realized what I'd done. And then he moved fast this time. 1 second there was space between us. The next, my back hit the wall. Not hard, not violent, just controlled, intentional. His hand came up beside my head, trapping me there without actually touching me. Always that line, always that distance he refused to cross. My breath caught as he leaned in again, closer than before, his voice dropping low enough that I felt it more than heard it. You think this is about fear, he murmured. My pulse spiked, my body betraying me again, heat rising under his gaze, under the weight of something I didn't understand. Then you're not paying attention. His eyes flicked to my lips again, slow, deliberate, and for a split second, I thought this time would be different. I thought this time he would break, but he didn't. Of course he didn't. He pulled back, just enough to put that unbearable space between us again, like he was controlling not just himself, but me too. Get some rest, he said calmly, as if nothing had happened, as if he hadn't just unraveled something inside me with a single look. And then he turned and walked away, just like that, leaving me there, breath uneven, heart racing, body still reacting to something that never even happened. I stayed against the wall for a long moment, trying to steady myself, trying to make sense of the way my thoughts refused to settle. He didn't touch me, not once, not even when he had me exactly where he wanted. And somehow, that was worse, because it meant he didn't have to, because it meant he was choosing not to. And for the first time, something unsettling slipped into my mind, something I didn't want to admit, something I didn't understand. If he ever did decide to cross that line, I wasn't sure I'd be able to stop him. Or worse, I wasn't sure I'd want to. He controls everything except the way he reacts to me. I didn't notice it at first, or maybe I did, and I just didn't want to admit it, because admitting it meant something was changing, and not just in him. The days in that house blurred together in a strange, suffocating rhythm. Silence, footsteps, the distant sound of doors, opening and closing somewhere far away. And him, always there, always watching, even when he wasn't in the room. I started to feel it, that invisible thread, pulling tighter every time he stepped closer, every time his eyes lingered just a second too long. He still didn't touch me, not in the way I expected, not in the way that would have made things simple. No, what he did was worse, more precise, more deliberate. The first time it happened, it felt like nothing, just a brush of his fingers against my wrist when he handed me a glass. Accidental, harmless, but it lingered. His touch didn't disappear right away. It stayed, just long enough for my breath to catch, just long enough for my body to react, before my mind could shut it down. I told myself it didn't mean anything. I told myself I imagined it. But then it happened again, and again, each time a little longer, a little less accidental, a little more intentional. He would stand too close, his shoulder almost brushing mine, his presence wrapping around me without ever fully closing in. He would reach past me instead of around me, his hand grazing my side, just enough to make me aware of every inch of space between us. It was a game. It had to be. A slow, controlled game where he decided exactly how far things would go and when they would stop. And the worst part, it was working. I started noticing things I shouldn't. The way his voice dropped when he was close. The way his breathing stayed steady no matter how tight the space between us became. The way his eyes, those cold, unreadable eyes, would flicker, just for a second, whenever I didn't pull away. Like he was testing something, like he was waiting. I hated it. I hated the way my body reacted, the way my pulse betrayed me, the way I stopped stepping back when he stepped closer. I told myself I was just tired, that it was the pressure, the situation, the fact that I had no control over anything in my life anymore. But deep down, I knew that wasn't it. The night everything shifted. It wasn't planned. It never is. I heard the noise before I saw him, a sharp, heavy sound echoing through the hallway, followed by silence that felt too thick, too wrong. My feet moved before I could think, before I could remind myself that whatever happened in this house wasn't my concern. I found him in one of the rooms I'd never been allowed near. The door was slightly open, the light inside, shadows cutting across the floor, and there he was, not the untouchable man who controlled everything, not the cold figure who never lost his composure. No, this was different. His shirt was stained, dark and spreading, his breathing heavier than I'd ever heard it, his posture tense in a way that wasn't controlled. It was forced. For a moment I froze, because this wasn't part of the game. "You're hurt," I said before I could stop myself. His head turned sharply, his eyes locking onto mine. And for a second, just a second, I saw something I'd never seen before. Not anger, not control, something raw, something unguarded. It vanished almost instantly. "Leave," he said, his voice low, tighter than usual. I didn't move. "You're bleeding." I said leave. I should have listened. I knew I should have. But something in me refused to step back this time. Maybe it was anger. Maybe it was defiance. Or maybe it was something else entirely. Something I didn't want to name. I stepped closer instead. His gaze sharpened immediately, tension snapping back into place like a reflex. "Don't," he warned. Too late. I was already in front of him, close enough to see the strain in his expression, close enough to feel the heat of his body, the slight hitch in his breath he was trying so hard to hide. "You're going to pass out if you keep pretending you're fine," I said quietly. He didn't answer, didn't move, just watched me, like he was deciding whether to stop me or let this happen. Slowly, carefully, I reached out. My fingers brushed against his shirt, right near the wound, and everything changed. His hand shot out instantly, grabbing my wrist before I could pull away. Tight, firm, not painful, but not gentle either. My breath caught, my heart slamming hard against my chest, as his grip held me in place. For a second, neither of us moved. The air between us shifted heavier, charged with something that had nothing to do with fear anymore. His eyes dropped, to where my hand still rested against him, to the place where I had touched him without permission. And then slowly, they lifted back to mine. Something cracked, not fully, not completely, but enough. Enough for me to see it, enough for me to feel it. His grip didn't loosen. If anything, it tightened slightly, his thumb pressing just a little more firmly against my pulse, like he was aware of exactly how fast it was beating, like he liked it. "You don't listen," he said, his voice lower now, rougher around the edges. I swallowed, forcing myself to hold his gaze. "Neither do you." Silence, heavy, thick. His eyes flickered again, that same dangerous intensity building. But this time, there was something else beneath it, something less controlled, something closer to breaking. For a moment, just one, I thought he was going to pull me closer. I thought this was it, the moment he crossed the line he'd been holding so carefully. But he didn't. Of course he didn't. Instead, he slowly released my wrist, only to move his hand higher, brushing against my arm, lingering just a second too long before pulling away completely. A different kind of touch, not accidental, not controlled in the same cold way as before. This one felt like a mistake. "Go," he said again, quieter this time. I hesitated, not because I was afraid, but because something in me didn't want to leave. Not like this, not when I'd finally seen the crack in the man who never lost control. But I turned anyway, one step, then another. I didn't look back. I couldn't, because I knew if I did, I might not leave at all. And as I walked away, one thought settled deep in my chest, heavier than anything that had come before it. He wasn't untouchable. He wasn't unbreakable. And whatever was happening between us was no longer just a game he controlled. If he can't kiss me, then he'll never truly choose me. I didn't want to think that way. I tried not to, but once the thought was there, it refused to leave. It stayed with me, in the silence of that house, in the spaces between his footsteps. In every moment, his eyes lingered just a little too long before pulling away. Something had changed after that night. I felt it, not just in him, but in me. He wasn't as distant anymore, not in the same way. The touches came easier now, still controlled, still careful, but no longer accidental. His hand on my arm when he passed by, his fingers brushing against mine when he gave me something, taking just a second too long to let go. The space between us had shrunk without either of us saying a word about it. And yet, the line was still there, always there. That invisible boundary he refused to cross. The one thing he wouldn't give, a kiss. It sounded ridiculous when I tried to make sense of it. Out of everything he could take, everything he could control, that was the one thing he denied. And somehow, that made it matter more than anything else. Because it meant something. It had to. I started watching him differently after that. Not the way he wanted, not the way that fed into his control, but the way you watch something you're trying to understand. Before it breaks you, I noticed the pauses, the hesitation, so small no one else would ever see it. The way his jaw tightened when I stood too close. The way his breathing changed, just slightly, when I didn't move away. He felt it too, whatever this was. And that was the problem, because he refused to act on it. Days passed like that, tension building, stretching, tightening, until it felt like something inside me was going to snap. I couldn't stay there like that, not knowing, not understanding, not being chosen. The moment I realized it, it hit me all at once, sharp and clear. I wasn't afraid of him anymore. I was afraid of what I was becoming around him. So I made a decision. I didn't tell anyone. There was no plan, no dramatic moment, no goodbye. Just a quiet understanding that if I stayed, I would lose something I couldn't get back. Maybe I already had. The hallway felt longer that night. Or maybe it was just the weight of what I was about to do pressing down on every step. I almost made it to the door. Almost. Where are you going? His voice stopped me before my hand could reach the handle. Low, calm, but different. I closed my eyes for a second before turning around. He stood at the end of the hallway, exactly where I knew he would be. Watching, always watching. Out. I said simply. He didn't move. That's not an option. I let out a quiet breath, something between a laugh and frustration. It is for me. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The air between us thickened, tension snapping into place like it always did when we stood too close to something real. He started walking toward me, slow, controlled, like always. But this time, I didn't wait for him to close the distance. I stepped forward first. That caught him off guard, just for a second, just enough for me to feel it. I stopped right in front of him, closer than I'd ever been without him pulling me there. My heart pounded hard, but my voice didn't shake. Why? I asked quietly. His gaze narrowed slightly. Why what? Why me? The question hung between us, heavier than anything I'd said before. You had a choice. I continued, my voice softer now, but sharper. You could have picked anyone. You could have done anything. I swallowed, forcing the next words out. So why me if you're not going to want me? Silence, real silence this time. Not the controlled kind he used to dominate a room, but the kind that meant something had hit deeper than expected. His eyes searched mine, something shifting behind them, something he wasn't used to showing. But he didn't answer. Of course he didn't. He never did. I nodded slowly, the answer settling in even without words. That's what I thought. I stepped past him before I could change my mind. One step, two. I could feel him behind me, close enough that the space between us barely existed anymore. My body reacted instantly, that familiar tension pulling tight in my chest, my breath catching before I could stop it. This was it. This was the moment. If he was going to stop me, he would do it now. His hand lifted. I felt it, the shift in the air, the movement I had learned to recognize without even looking. It hovered there, close enough to touch me, close enough to pull me back. But it didn't. He didn't. And that hurt more than anything else. I let out a slow breath, something inside me finally breaking into something clear and steady. If you can't kiss me, I said quietly, not turning around, not giving him the chance to see what this was doing to me, then you'll never really choose me. The words landed. I knew they did. I felt it in the silence that followed, in the way the air seemed to still completely. But he didn't argue, didn't stop me, didn't say a single word. So I kept walking, and this time, I didn't stop. The door opened easier than I expected. The night air hit my skin, cold and real in a way nothing inside that house had ever been. For a second, I hesitated, just one, waiting, hoping. For footsteps, for his voice, for anything. Nothing came. I stepped outside and closed the door behind me. And just like that, it was over. I walked away from the man who controlled everything, and he let me. The man who never kisses came for me like he was. Out of time. I didn't expect him to follow. That was the truth I kept telling myself as I walked away from that house, from him, from everything that had started to feel dangerously close to something I couldn't control. Days passed, then nights, and still nothing. No footsteps behind me, no shadow watching from across the street, no quiet, suffocating presence slipping into the spaces around me. It should have felt like freedom. It didn't. It felt wrong, too quiet, too empty, like something had been ripped away before I understood what it was. I told myself it was just habit, just the aftereffect of being watched, being controlled, being wanted in the strangest, most incomplete way. But that wasn't it, because no matter how far I went, no matter how much I tried to forget, there was one thing I couldn't erase: the way he looked at me, like he was holding something back every second we were together, like the line he refused to cross meant more than anything else. And that was the problem, because now I knew why. I understood it too late. A kiss wasn't nothing to him. It wasn't control. It wasn't power. It was the one thing he couldn't fake. The one thing he couldn't give without meaning it. Which meant he had never wanted to give it to me. Or maybe he had been afraid to. The thought hit harder than I expected, settling deep in my chest, sharp and unsteady. I shouldn't have cared. I shouldn't have wanted it. But I did. And that was my mistake. The night it happened, I didn't see it coming. I never do. One moment, everything was normal, quiet, controlled, predictable. The next, it wasn't. The sound came first. A car door, too fast, too close. Then footsteps, not careful, not controlled, rushed, urgent. My body reacted before my mind could catch up. Something instinctive tightening in my chest as I turned toward the sound. And there he was, not calm, not distant, not in control. For the first time since I met him, he looked like a man who had lost something. His eyes found mine instantly, just like they always did, but this time, there was no calculation, no distance, just something raw, something desperate. My breath caught. "You left," he said, his voice lower than I'd ever heard it, rougher, like it had been dragged through something sharp before reaching me. I swallowed, forcing myself to stay still. "You let me." The words landed harder than I intended. I saw it in the way his jaw tightened, in the flicker of something dark crossing his expression. But he didn't deny it. He stepped closer instead, fast, closing the distance, in a way he never had before. No hesitation, no careful control, just movement, just need. My heart slammed against my chest, my body reacting instantly, that familiar tension snapping into place. But this time, it felt different, stronger, unsteady. "Say it again," he said quietly. I blinked, thrown off by the intensity in his voice. "What?" "That I let you go." His eyes locked onto mine, something sharp and dangerous burning behind them. "Say it again." My breath hitched, but I didn't look away. "You let me go." The second the words left my lips, everything changed. He moved. No warning, no pause. 1 second there was space between us. The next, there wasn't. His hand came up, not stopping beside me, not hovering like before, but touching, finally touching, fingers sliding against my jaw, firm, steady, leaving no space for distance, no room for escape. My breath caught sharply, my entire body going still under the weight of it. This wasn't the controlled man I knew. This wasn't the one who stopped himself inches away every time. This was something else, something he had been holding back. "I didn't let you go," he said, his voice low, tight, like every word was being forced out against something stronger. His thumb brushed lightly against my skin, slower than it should have been, like he was memorizing the feel of it. I waited, my pulse spiked. "For what?" I whispered. His eyes dropped to my lips again, and this time, he didn't look away. "For this." And then he closed the distance. No hesitation, no stopping, no invisible line holding him back anymore. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't careless. It was deliberate, certain, like he had made a decision he couldn't take back. My breath caught, the world narrowing down to that single moment, that single point where everything shifted from tension into something real. And suddenly, I understood why he never did it, why he refused, why he held back every single time. Because this meant something. His hand tightened slightly against my jaw, not controlling, but grounding, steadying. Like he wasn't sure what would happen if he let go. Like he wasn't sure what would happen to him when he finally pulled back. It wasn't far, not enough to break the connection, not enough to return to what we were before. His forehead rested lightly against mine, his breath still uneven, his control still not fully back in place. "I don't kiss," he said quietly, the words softer now, stripped of that cold certainty they used to carry. I let out a small breath, my heart still racing, my thoughts still trying to catch up. You just did. Something shifted in his expression, something almost like a smile, but not quite, something deeper, because it means something, he said. His eyes lifted to meet mine again. No distance left in them, now no barrier. No calculation, just truth, raw and unguarded, in a way I had never seen before. And you, his voice dropped slightly, not weaker, but more real, mean everything. The words hit harder than anything else he had ever said to me, not because they were loud, not because they were dramatic, but because I knew. He wouldn't have said them if they weren't true. Silence settled between us again, but this time, it wasn't suffocating. It wasn't heavy. It was something else entirely. Something steady, something certain. I should have stepped back. I should have walked away again, but I didn't, because this time, I wasn't being held there by control. I was choosing to stay.